unaware I secretly owned the company his mistress worked for. My husband left me and our triplets in the rain to please her, until he walks into the office. He didn't just leave them. He did it with the engine running, the window only halfway down, and another woman sitting right beside him while his three children stood there shivering. Ethan Bennett stared past the rain-streaked glass at the wife who had carried his triplets and said, almost bored, "I can't do this anymore. She needs me tonight." Water dripped from the hood of Claire's thin jacket. Noah, Lily, and Grace clung to her legs, their small shoes already soaked. Around them, the school parking lot emptied, fast car doors slamming, tires splashing away, parents rushing their kids home. People glanced over. A few slowed. No one walked up. No one stopped him. In the passenger seat, the other woman shifted impatiently. Rachel Moore. Perfect hair, dry coat. The blue company lanyard hanging around her neck glowed faintly when the dashboard lights hit it. She glanced at Claire and the children, then smirked as if this wasn't a family breaking, just an obstacle finally being moved out of her way. To Ethan, Claire was just the quiet wife who didn't understand his world, a woman who stayed home, managed schedules, packed lunches, and lived small. He believed she knew nothing about the company that paid his consulting fees. He believed she had nowhere to go when he chose someone else over them in the rain. What he didn't know was this. The woman he abandoned at that curb had signed a very different set of documents long before the storm. On every official record, she wasn't just Claire Bennett, the housewife, she was Claire Hart, the name on the founding documents of a logistics and compliance company now held through a private trust. On paper, she was a silent majority owner. In practice, she was the unseen hand behind a board, a COO, and the HR department that had hired Rachel, printed her badge, and approved the lanyard she was wearing. The night he drove away was not the night she broke. She'd already begun to move her pieces quietly. But it was the night she stopped protecting his illusion and decided to stop hiding who actually owned the ground he was standing on and the office he would soon walk into. Completely unprepared. Dear viewers, if you felt that chill in your chest, don't just scroll past like the people who watched Claire get left in the rain. Subscribe, like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, so we walk into that office together when everything finally turns. The sound that broke the morning was not shouting or chaos, it was silence pressed too tight. Claire Bennett stood alone in the hallway, holding a phone that had already gone dark. For a brief second, her reflection stared back at her from the glass frame on the wall. A woman in her mid-30s, calm eyes, steady hands, hair pulled back with quiet purpose. Nothing about her looked fragile. And yet, this was exactly how the world saw her: soft, settled, harmless. That misunderstanding had followed her for years. Claire was the kind of woman people overlook by design. She chose neutral colors. She spoke last, not first. She asked questions instead of offering opinions. At 36, she had learned that invisibility was not weakness, it was cover. Behind her, the house stirred to life. Three small voices echoed from the bedroom down the hall. Noah, Lily, Grace. The triplets were 6 years old, loud in laughter, gentle in sleep, and the center of Claire's universe. She turned as they ran toward her, socks mismatched, backpacks half-zipped, already arguing about nothing that mattered. She knelt instinctively, fixing straps, smoothing hair, kissing foreheads. This was her rhythm. This was her life. Ethan Bennett watched from the kitchen doorway, coffee in hand. At 38, he looked every bit the confident husband: pressed shirt, polished shoes, posture straight with quiet pride. He worked as an external consultant, moving between firms, always chasing the next opportunity. He liked to believe he was the engine of their household. To him, Claire was stable ground, comfortable, predictable. That was the role she had allowed. Breakfast passed without friction. The children ate. Ethan checked his phone. Claire packed lunches with practiced efficiency. No raised voices, no obvious tension. From the outside, it looked like a marriage untouched by struggle. But marriages, like businesses, often survived on what stayed unspoken. Years earlier, before the children, before the routines, Claire had been someone else entirely. The memory came back to her the way it always did: quiet, uninvited. She was 24 again, sitting at a small wooden desk late at night, the glow of a laptop illuminating stacks of paperwork. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, steady and certain. He had been a logistics entrepreneur, brilliant with systems, obsessed with efficiency. He taught her how supply chains worked before she could legally rent a car. He taught her to listen more than she spoke. When he died suddenly, he left her something most people never saw: seed money, carefully invested, paired with trust documents and a single instruction written in his handwriting: build something honest and keep your name clean. Claire had done exactly that. Under her maiden name, Claire Hart, she formed CB Holdings, then the operating company beneath it. She grew the business slowly and quietly. She refused interviews. She avoided press. Only her lawyer, Daniel Ross, and a handful of senior executives knew that the woman on the other end of the board calls was the actual founder. Everyone else saw the trust. Every decision was deliberate. Every signature calm. Even when she was pregnant, tired, swollen. Alone at night, she signed contracts with steady hands while Ethan traveled for what he called career-making projects. A flash of memory cut through her thoughts. Claire, pregnant, sitting alone at a conference table, pen hovering. Another memory. Her whispering into a phone late at night, voice low so no one would hear. Keep it under the trust, she had said. Use my maiden name on everything. Another. A leather folder locked in a drawer at home. The initials CB Holdings pressed into the cover. She had never hidden it out of fear. She hid it out of belief. Claire believed marriage should never be a power contest. She believed love worked best when it didn't keep score. Ethan had his consulting world. She kept her company life separate, tidy, invisible. Ethan had never asked. That was the part that mattered. The morning moved on. School drop-off, a quick kiss on the cheek. Ethan barely noticed the folder. Claire slipped deeper into the drawer before closing it. To him, she was exactly where she belonged at home, managing life quietly, depending on him. By evening, the family gathered around the dinner table. The children talked over one another, eager and bright. Claire listened, smiling, absorbing every detail like she always did. Ethan leaned back in his chair, relaxed, amused by the noise. You know, he said casually, cutting into his food. It's a good thing you don't care about money. The room stilled for half a second. Makes life simple, he added with a grin, unaware of what he had just stepped over. Claire looked at him. Really looked. She smiled. She said nothing. Noah laughed. Lily asked for more juice. Grace dropped her fork. Life went on, but something had shifted, just enough to matter. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Claire stood alone in the hallway again. The house was quiet. Too quiet. She rested her hand against the drawer where the leather folder slept, untouched. She did not open it, not yet, because somewhere beyond the walls of this quiet house, a choice was already being made, one that would soon force truths into the open. And when that happened, the woman Ethan had never questioned would no longer stay invisible. The phone vibrated once, sharp, sudden, and out of place. Claire felt it before she heard it. Ethan froze mid-step in the living room, his hand already halfway into his pocket. For just a second, his expression shifted, not panic, not guilt, but calculation. He glanced at Claire, then at the triplets spread across the floor with their toys, and without a word he turned and stepped outside. The door closed softly behind him. That softness was what made it loud. Claire remained still, her heart beating faster than it should have for something so small. Through the glass, she watched Ethan's back as he lifted the phone to his ear, shoulders angled away from the house. His voice dropped, low and careful. I told you, not right now. He stopped, turned slightly. Claire realized she was staring. Ethan ended the call too quickly, slid the phone back into his pocket, and walked inside with an easy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Work, he said casually, as if that explained everything. Claire nodded. She always nodded. But something had already changed. Later that evening, the house moved through its normal rhythms. Homework at the table, baths drawn upstairs. Ethan paced near the window, checking his phone more often than before. Each time the screen lit up, he angled it away. At one point, the phone buzzed again. This time, Claire caught a glimpse. Just a second. That was all. A woman's profile picture filled the screen. Professional, polished, dark blazer. Hair pulled back. Around her neck hung a company lanyard, its logo blurred by motion, but the color unmistakable. That particular shade of blue. Claire's hand paused mid-motion as she folded a towel. Her chest tightened. She didn't know why, not logically, not yet, but her body reacted before her thoughts could catch up. She had seen that color before. Not in her home, not in Ethan's stories. On early branding mock-ups, in board decks, in the final logo file she had approved herself years ago, sitting at that wooden desk under a different last name. She had signed off on that blue. The realization passed through her like a cold draft. Claire forced herself to keep moving. She finished folding. She stacked towels. She told herself she might be imagining it. Plenty of companies use blue, but imagination didn't explain the tension in her shoulders. That night, after the children were asleep, Ethan stood near the window again. His phone vibrated. He didn't answer it this time. Instead, he typed quickly, his back turned. Claire watched from the doorway. She said nothing. Marriage had taught her that some truths revealed themselves faster when you stayed quiet. When Ethan finally went to bed, his phone remained on the nightstand. Face down. Too deliberate. Claire lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing even out. She did not reach for the phone. Not yet. She had learned patience long before she learned trust. The next morning came with forced normalcy. Breakfast, school bags, shoes by the door. Ethan kissed the children goodbye, ruffled their hair, and left with a promise he had already stopped keeping. Claire stood at the counter long after the door closed. Later, while cleaning the kitchen, she noticed Ethan's laptop still open on the table. He rarely forgot it. The screen had dimmed, but not locked. Claire hesitated. This was the moment where curiosity could become something else. She touched the mouse. A calendar filled the screen. Most entries were standard: calls, travel, deadlines. But one line, repeated every week, caught her attention. Board prep, external consultant. The entry appeared too often, too consistently, always late, always blocked off. Claire stared at the words. Ethan had never mentioned which company's board he was preparing for, just that he was helping a client at a high level. He liked phrases like that. She sat down slowly, her mind working through possibilities. Consultants prepared reports. They didn't usually attend internal board prep meetings unless they were deeply embedded, trusted, or personally involved. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A message from the school reminding her about an upcoming event for the triplets. Normal life pushing in, demanding attention. Claire closed the laptop. She didn't confront Ethan. She didn't accuse him. She didn't cry. Instead, she opened a drawer in the hallway, the one Ethan never touched. Inside, beneath old documents and family photos, rested a leather folder, its surface worn but immaculate. CB Holdings. Claire didn't open it. She only rested her hand on the cover, steady and deliberate. Somewhere, a woman with a blue lanyard was stepping deeper into a world she didn't fully understand. And somewhere else, a line was quietly being crossed, one that would soon force Claire to stop observing and start remembering exactly who she was. The calendar entry glowed in her mind as she turned off the light. Board prep, it said. Claire finally understood one thing for certain. Work was no longer just work. The voice came through the speaker without warning. Claire, are you on? Her breath caught. For half a second, Claire Bennett stood frozen in the quiet study. The door locked, the lights dimmed, her laptop already open on the desk. The screen glowed with a familiar interface, secure board portal, her maiden name in the corner, C. Hart, trustee representative. She reached forward and muted her camera. Yes, she said calmly. I'm here. The voice belonged to Daniel Ross, her lawyer and trustee representative. He was in his late 40s, sharp-eyed, precise, and one of the very few people who knew the full structure of Claire's world. Tonight he wasn't calling as her divorce attorney because there was no divorce yet. Tonight he was exactly what the login screen said, her shield between the trust and the executives. Good, Daniel said. They're about to start. The screen shifted. Another window opened. A man appeared mid-40s, composed, wearing a headset and a crisp shirt. His name appeared below his image. Mark Ellison, Chief Operating Officer. Mark had been with the company since its early growth phase. He was loyal, efficient, and deliberately uninformed about who Claire was in her personal life. To him, she was simply the founder who preferred distance, a controlling interest represented through the trust. Evening, everyone, Mark said. Let's begin. Claire leaned back in her chair, folding her hands together. Her camera stayed off. Most people in the virtual room had never seen her face. They didn't need to. Her votes and approvals came through Daniel, through signatures, through the trust. This was how she had always operated. Invisible, listening, controlling from the edges. The meeting moved quickly at first. Performance metrics, compliance updates, forecasts. Claire listened with practiced focus, her mind half on the numbers, half on the quiet storm building beneath them. Then Mark shifted topics. I want to flag something positive from the compliance team, he said. One of our internal analysts has shown exceptional initiative. Claire's fingers tightened slightly on her pen. Our compliance analyst, Mark continued. Rachel Moore. The name struck like a physical blow. Claire's posture stiffened. Her breath slowed, deliberate, controlled. She kept her voice steady when she spoke through audio only. Go on, she said. Mark smiled slightly. She's ambitious, sharp, knows how to position herself with leadership. Frankly, she's been impressing a lot of people. Claire stared at the dark reflection of her screen. Rachel Moore. The name echoed in her mind, pulling a memory forward. Months earlier, Claire had sat at this same desk, flipping through resumes forwarded by HR for sign-off at the trust level. She remembered pausing on one in particular. Strong credentials, clean record, strategic career moves. Rachel Moore. Claire had approved the hire with a single click. She remembered thinking the woman would go far. The meeting continued, but Claire's attention narrowed. Mark kept speaking. Our internal audit team did flag one thing. Nothing formal yet, but I want it on the radar. He glanced down at his notes. Rachel's been working closely with one of our external consultants, he said carefully, helping align some reporting and prep work for the board. Claire's heart beat once. Hard. External consultant. Her mind flicked to Ethan, to his calendar, to the recurring board prep entry he never explained, to the blue lanyard in the profile picture. She said nothing. The silence stretched. Daniel's voice cut in smoothly. Is there any concern we should be aware of? He asked, playing his role as trust counsel. Mark hesitated just a fraction. Not enough to notice unless you were trained to listen for it. Not formal concern, he said. Just proximity. Late nights. Off-site meetings logged under vague descriptions. He exhaled. She's been unusually close to a married external consultant. We're treating it as a potential conflict of interest risk for now, and HR is quietly monitoring. The words landed with devastating clarity. Married consultant, compliance analyst. Her company. Claire froze. For a moment the room felt too small, the air too thin, but she kept her tone flat. Ensure HR documents everything, she said. No gossip, only facts. Of course, Mark replied. The meeting moved on, but Claire barely heard it. Her thoughts spiraled inward, controlled but relentless. The woman Ethan was hiding, the woman working inside her company, the woman climbing through doors Claire herself had built. When the meeting ended, the screen went dark. Daniel stayed on the line. You all right? He asked. Claire opened her eyes. Yes. He didn't argue. He knew better. Do you want me to dig? Daniel asked. Not yet, Claire said after a pause. I need to understand the shape of this first. Understood. The call ended. Claire sat alone in the darkened study, the silence pressing in again. She stared at the drawer across the room. The leather folder inside it felt heavier now, as if it were waking up. Rachel Moore had a name now, and a place. What Claire didn't yet know, what no one knew, was how far this betrayal had already gone. Claire stood slowly, her reflection faint in the dark screen. Somewhere, lines were being crossed in secret, and very soon, those lines would surface in the worst possible way. The announcement came without warning, dropped into the room like a crack of thunder. I won't make it tonight. Claire looked up slowly. Ethan stood near the doorway of the bedroom, tie loosened, jacket draped over his arm. His tone was casual, too casual for what he was saying. The kids' presentation, he added, as if remembering it late. Work ran long. For a moment the house felt unbearably loud. The triplets were sprawled across the living room floor, cutting colored paper and gluing shapes together for the small performance they had practiced all week. Their excitement buzzed in the air, fragile and hopeful. Noah looked up first. You promised. Ethan didn't meet his son's eyes. I know, buddy. I'll make the next one. Lily's smile faltered. Grace said nothing at all. Claire felt the impact in her chest, sharp and immediate, but her face didn't change. She had learned long ago that reactions could be used against you, so she kept her voice level. That's the third time, she said quietly. Ethan sighed, already halfway into his jacket. Claire, this is important. You know how things are right now with this client. I'm prepping their board. She did know. That was the problem. Go, she said. The word surprised even her. Ethan hesitated, just briefly, as if waiting for more, for anger, for pleading, for resistance. When none came, he nodded, relieved. Thanks for understanding, he said, and turned toward the closet. Claire watched him pack. That was when she noticed it. The suit. Dark. Tailored. Expensive in a way Ethan's consulting fees didn't quite justify on their own. The fabric caught the light differently. The stitching was precise, deliberate, not something chosen on impulse, not something chosen just for PowerPoint slides in a boardroom. She didn't comment. She folded laundry on the bed with careful attention, each movement slow, measured. Ethan moved around her, checking his phone, glancing at his reflection. The distance between them felt wider than the room. When he stepped into the bathroom, Claire reached for his jacket, intending to hang it neatly. Her fingers brushed something stiff in the inner pocket. A receipt. She slid it out without thinking. Hotel bar, 2 drinks, timestamp, late evening. Charged to a corporate card the company had issued Ethan strictly for client travel. Her breath caught. For a brief second, the room tilted. Not because she didn't understand what she was seeing, but because she did. 2 drinks, not alone, and not an expense he had any right to charge that way. Claire folded the receipt carefully and slipped it back into the pocket. She hung the jacket exactly where it had been. Ethan emerged moments later, freshly composed. He kissed her cheek quickly, already distracted, already gone. I'll call later, he said. She nodded. The door closed behind him with a finality that settled deep in her bones. Claire stood there long after his footsteps faded, listening to the quiet hum of the house. The triplets' voices drifted in from the living room, lower now, more subdued. She walked out to them. Noah looked up again. Is Daddy coming? Claire knelt in front of them, her heart aching in a way she refused to show. She smiled, gentle and steady. Not tonight, she said, but I'll be here. That had always been true. After the children were asleep, Claire sat alone at the kitchen table. The clock ticked softly. Her phone lay face up in front of her, screen dark. She thought of the blue lanyard, of Rachel Moore's name echoing in the board meeting, of the calendar entries, of the receipt. This was no longer a suspicion. It was a pattern. Still, Claire didn't call Ethan. She didn't demand explanations that would only teach him how to lie better. Instead, she stood and walked to the hallway. She opened the drawer. The leather folder waited inside, just as it always had. This time, she took it out. She placed it on the table, opened it, and looked at the documents inside, not as something separate from her marriage, but as something that now intersected with it. Then she picked up her phone. Her fingers hovered over the screen. She typed a single word to Daniel. Proceed. She stared at it for a long moment. Then, for the first time, she didn't hit send. She saved it in drafts instead. Because she knew something now with unsettling clarity. Ethan was already crossing lines, but he hadn't crossed the line that would end everything. Not yet. Claire turned off the kitchen light and stood in the darkness, listening to the house breathe around her. Outside, somewhere far from the quiet of home, choices were being made that would soon collide with consequences. And very soon, someone would make a decision that could not be undone. The sky broke open without warning. Thunder cracked so close it rattled the glass doors of the school auditorium, and rain slammed down in heavy sheets, loud and unforgiving. Parents rushed toward cars, coats over heads, voices raised. Children cried, laughed, shouted. Chaos moved fast. Claire stood still. She was under the narrow overhang, near the curb. One arm wrapped around Noah, the other pulling Lily and Grace close as water soaked through their shoes. The triplets clutched their paper programs, edges dissolving, ink bleeding into nothing. Ethan was late. Again. Claire checked her phone. No missed calls. No message. Just the time glowing back at her, each second stretching thin. He said he'd be here, Grace whispered, her voice small under the roar of the rain. He will, Claire said automatically. But even as she spoke, something in her chest tightened, not fear, not panic, but recognition. The quiet kind that came right before truth. Headlights cut through the rain. A familiar car slowed near the curb. Noah's face lit up. "Dad!" The car stopped. The engine idled, wipers thudding back and forth against the storm. The window rolled down halfway. Ethan sat behind the wheel, dry, clean, his jacket immaculate. He didn't get out. Claire stepped forward instinctively, rain soaking her sleeves, her hair sticking to her face. She leaned down so the children could see him clearly. Then she saw the passenger seat. A woman sat there, mid-30s, polished, composed, a dark coat draped perfectly over her shoulders, untouched by the storm. Her hair smooth, her makeup intact. Around her neck, unmistakable even now, hung a blue company lanyard. This time the logo wasn't blurred. It was the exact emblem Claire had approved years ago. Rachel Moore looked straight ahead, then turned slowly toward Claire, and smiled. Not kindly, not awkwardly, impatiently. Ethan cleared his throat. He didn't look at the children first. He looked at Claire. "I can't do this anymore," he said, voice flat, as if reciting a decision he'd already rehearsed. "She needs me tonight. I'm moving on, Claire. This isn't working." The words landed hard. Lily gasped. Noah froze. Grace tightened her grip on Claire's coat. Claire felt the rain soak deeper, colder, but her mind went strangely calm. Time slowed, every detail sharp. The way Ethan's hand stayed on the wheel, the way he avoided Noah's eyes, the way Rachel's gaze flicked briefly to the children, then back to Claire. Measuring, dismissive. She knows, Claire realized. Rachel knew he was married, she knew there were children, and she was here anyway. "Dad?" Noah said softly. "Are you coming home?" Ethan finally looked at them. For a split second, something like hesitation crossed his face. But it passed quickly, replaced by resolve and something uglier, self-preservation. "I'll talk to you later," he said, already shifting the car into gear. "This is better for everyone." Claire pulled the children closer, shielding them from the rain and from him. Rachel leaned back in her seat, satisfied, as if a negotiation had just ended in her favor. Her smirk was small, almost imperceptible. But Claire saw it. The car rolled forward. No dramatic goodbye, no apology, no explanation that made sense. Just a choice made in plain sight. The taillights disappeared into the rain. For a long moment, no one moved. The storm swallowed the street, washing away footprints, blurring everything but the present. Lily started to cry. Grace followed. Noah stood silent, his face tight with confusion and hurt far too old for 6 years. Claire lowered herself to her knees on the wet pavement, ignoring the cold seeping through her clothes. She wrapped her arms around all three of them, pulling them into her, anchoring them. She didn't cry. Not because she couldn't, but because she understood something now with absolute clarity. This wasn't a mistake, it was a decision. And decisions had consequences. Other parents passed by, offering sympathetic looks. A couple of quiet, "Do you need a ride?" Claire shook her head gently, thanked them, and kept her focus on the children in her arms, their shaking breaths, their trust. After a moment, she stood. She took off her coat and wrapped it around Grace. She adjusted Lily's backpack. She took Noah's hand. "We're going home," Claire said calmly. Noah looked up at her. "Is Dad coming back?" Claire met his eyes. She didn't lie. "I don't know," she said. "But we're going to be okay." They walked away from the curb together, rain soaking them to the skin. Later that night, after hot showers and dry pajamas, the house fell quiet again. The children slept in one room, close together, as if instinctively refusing distance. Claire stood alone in the hallway. She removed her wet shoes. She set her phone down on the table. Her hands were steady. She didn't replay the moment. She didn't ask why. She walked to the drawer. This time, she opened it without hesitation. The leather folder came out, heavier than before, its presence undeniable. She placed it on the table, opened it, and stared at the documents inside not with anger, but with focus. Power, she realized, wasn't loud. It waited. Claire picked up her phone, opened the unsent draft to Daniel, and read the single word she had typed days earlier. "Proceed." She pressed send. Somewhere beyond this house, someone believed they had won. They were wrong. Very soon, the storm would move indoors. Here we go. Scene 610, cleaned up for logic and realism, keeping your voice and length very close to the original. Then a list of the main logic gaps I fixed at the end. The sound of the lock clicking open was louder than the thunder had been. Claire stood alone in the hallway long after midnight, the house wrapped in a deep, unnatural quiet. The triplets were asleep in the guest room, their beds pushed close together, as if even in dreams they refused to be separated again. The steady rhythm of their breathing drifted down the hall. Claire turned the small key once more. The drawer slid open. Inside lay the life Ethan had never bothered to ask about. Neatly stacked trust documents. Company structure charts mapped with clean lines and careful layers. Board access credentials printed and laminated. Early branding notes, including the exact shade of blue now hanging from Rachel's neck. Everything orderly. Everything controlled. Claire removed the leather folder and carried it to the kitchen table. She sat down slowly, as if grounding herself before touching something powerful. This was the moment pain turned into precision. She didn't cry. She didn't replay the image of the car driving away. She didn't let herself imagine Ethan's voice or Rachel's smirk. She opened the folder. The pages were familiar, comforting, even. They reminded her who she had been before she chose to become invisible for love. Her name, Claire Hart, appeared again and again alongside CB Holdings and the operating company beneath it. She picked up her phone and opened the draft she had saved days earlier. One word waited on the screen. Proceed. This time, she pressed send. Daniel Ross answered on the second ring. Tell me where you are emotionally, he said calmly. That was Daniel's way, always direct, always steady. For years, he had been her trust counsel, the only one besides the COO who knew she was more than a silent line item on an org chart. I'm focused, Claire replied. Silence. Then, good, Daniel said. Then we move carefully. We keep your roles clean, founder, trustee, and wife seeking a possible divorce. No impulsive overlap. They met the next afternoon in Daniel's office, away from her home, away from emotions. Claire arrived alone. Daniel had known her for years, long enough to understand that when she didn't raise her voice, something serious was happening. He laid out the reality without softness. If you decide to file, he said, we won't rely on hurt feelings. We rely on facts. We document adultery and misuse of company resources. Timing matters. The way we obtain that evidence matters more. Claire nodded. I don't want a scandal. I want the truth, and I want the children protected. Then we handle this in two lanes, Daniel said. One, corporate. As founder and majority owner, you're entitled to a full review of any compliance breach, especially involving a consultant and a staff member. Two, personal. As your attorney, I protect you and the kids. He slid a folder across the desk. You keep your public distance from this. We let internal processes do the work. That's fine, Claire said quietly. I've been distant for years. Daniel's mouth twitched in something almost like a smile. I'm bringing in someone who specializes in internal misconduct, corporate side only. She'll report to me. I'll filter what matters for the divorce. Her name, Claire asked. Maya Holt. The second meeting happened 2 days later, in a quiet cafe, far from Claire's usual routines. Maya arrived first. She was in her early 40s, dressed plainly, her posture alert without tension. A former corporate investigator, she specialized in internal misconduct and quiet exposure. For employees, she was the last person you wanted interested in your name. You don't want drama, Maya said as Claire sat down. You want proof. Yes, Claire said. Only proof, and only what we can obtain properly. Maya nodded, approving the answer. Then we'll get along. They didn't discuss feelings. They discussed thresholds. What we need, Maya explained, sliding a tablet from her bag, is documented misuse of company resources, verified communication during work hours, and access patterns that violate policy. Because your owner, the board, and HR have authorized a full internal review. She turned the screen slightly so Claire could see. Hotel receipts appeared first. Same bar, same location, multiple dates. All charged to an internal client travel card issued to Ethan for this one major engagement. Hotels where he wasn't booked to stay, Maya said. Bar charges on nights with no client meetings logged. You can't expel him from the company, he's not an employee, but you can show he violated policy and trust. Emails followed. Short, familiar, intimate in tone. Ethan and Rachel. Subject lines about board prep that turned into dinner plans halfway down the thread. Sent during office hours, Maya said. Deleted by both of them from their inboxes. Archived copies remained on the server. Your IT department was very cooperative once they got direction from the trust. Security footage came next. Late-night office access. Two figures entering separately within minutes of each other, leaving together almost 2 hours later. Her badge, then his, Maya said. Different nights. No scheduled meetings in the system. HR had flagged the pattern as a potential professionalism issue. Now it's part of a bigger picture. Finally, expense reports, numbers adjusted, categories altered. Personal meals filed as client dinners, overlapping with the bar receipts. Claire felt a steady pressure behind her eyes but kept her expression calm. This was not chaos. This was structure. That night, after the children were asleep again, Claire sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open. Emails from the COO, Mark Ellison, waited in her inbox. Routine updates. Performance notes. She read them carefully now, with new understanding. Rachel Moore's name appeared more than once. Excellent initiative. Strong alignment with leadership. Rapid internal trust. Claire closed the laptop slowly. Every piece was connecting. Still, she didn't contact Ethan. Still, she didn't warn Rachel. Silence was not weakness. It was space. 2 weeks passed. The investigation deepened quietly, methodically. Claire maintained routines, school drop-offs, homework, dinner, stability for the children. At night, she reviewed sanitized summaries from Daniel. In the mornings, she smiled. One evening, as she rinsed dishes, her phone buzzed. Maya, there's something else, Maya said. Claire set the plate down. What? I broadened the search. Maya continued. With IT's help, we checked for any non-work files stored in Rachel's work cloud account. She'd been sloppy. Claire said nothing. Messages, Maya said. Not just between them. Notes she wrote to herself. Screenshots. And in one of them, she referenced you, by name. Claire's chest tightened. She knew? She knew you were his wife, Maya said. She knew about the children. She wrote that he was dragging his feet because of the triplets. The words landed slowly, heavily. So it wasn't confusion. It wasn't ignorance. It wasn't a blind affair. It was a choice. Maya's voice softened, just slightly. We also have enough to justify ending his consulting agreement cleanly. Legal's already preparing language. The board will want a controlled confrontation. Claire inhaled once, deeply. Thank you, she said. When the call ended, Claire remained seated in the dark kitchen. The house was still. The folder lay open in front of her. She touched the edge of the documents, steadying herself. Somewhere Rachel believed she was untouchable. Somewhere else, Ethan believed silence meant safety. They were both wrong. And very soon, someone would step into a room they thought they controlled only to realize it had never belonged to them at all. The argument exploded without warning. You told me this was handled. Rachel Moore's voice cracked through the recording, sharp and uneven. Nothing like the calm confidence she wore at the office. The video shook slightly, filmed from a phone placed face down on a table, the camera angled just enough to capture Ethan's clenched jaw and restless pacing. I said I'd take care of it, Ethan snapped. You're overreacting. I'm not, Rachel shot back. Audits don't just happen. People are looking. The room on the screen was unfamiliar to Claire. Modern, expensive, temporary, a hotel suite. She recognized the logo of the hotel chain from the receipts Maya had already shown her. The recording continued. Rachel stood near the window, arms crossed tight against her chest. She was no longer polished, no lanyard, no practiced smile, just fear slipping through the cracks. You promised me, she said. You said she was out of the picture. Ethan stopped pacing. I said I was handling it. That's not the same thing, Rachel said. She's not stupid, Ethan. She's asking questions. HR is asking questions. Claire watched the footage in complete silence. She sat at her kitchen table, lights off, laptop glowing softly in the dark. The house was asleep. The children were safe. This moment belonged to truth alone. On screen, Ethan ran a hand through his hair. You're panicking for nothing. The board likes me. No one's coming after you. Rachel let out a sharp, humorless laugh. You don't know that, she said. She stepped closer to him, lowering her voice. If this blows back on me, she said slowly, deliberately. I'll say you pursued me. I'll say you used your influence as a consultant to pressure me. And I'll give them everything. Ethan froze. What? He said. I won't go down for this, Rachel continued. I worked too hard to get here, and I'm not losing it because you couldn't keep your life separate. You said you cared about me, Ethan replied, disbelief flickering across his face. Rachel's expression hardened. I care about myself. The words hung in the air. Claire leaned back slightly in her chair. That sentence told her everything she needed to know. The argument escalated on screen. Ethan raised his voice. Rachel cut him off. At some point, the recording ended abruptly. The phone clearly picked up and slipped into a pocket. The video stopped. Claire stared at the frozen frame. Ethan mid-sentence. Rachel's face turned away, already calculating her exit. A soft knock sounded on the kitchen door behind her. Claire didn't flinch. Maya stepped in quietly, closing the door behind her. She carried herself the same way she always did, calm, efficient, observant. Recorded 3 days ago, Maya said, setting her tablet down beside the laptop. She started it herself. Claire nodded once. Where did you find it? In a personal folder she'd created on her work cloud drive, Maya replied. She labeled it just in case. IT flagged it when we expanded the search parameters. Because it's on company systems, legal cleared its use. Claire exhaled slowly. She was scared, Claire said, but not for the right reasons. No, Maya agreed. But this recording strengthens everything. It shows she knew he was married. It shows she anticipated consequences. It shows she's prepared to sacrifice him to save herself. Claire closed the laptop. She didn't betray him for me, Claire said quietly. She betrayed him for herself. Maya watched her closely. That's usually how it goes. They sat in silence for a moment. Claire's mind moved methodically, placing this new piece into the larger picture. The affair, the misuse of company funds, the deception, and now documented intent to lie if cornered. Rachel wasn't loyal. She was strategic, and strategy could be used. For the next phase, Maya said, HR and legal have proposed a joint session. Officially, it's a board prep meeting to review consultant performance. Unofficially, it's where they'll confront both of them with this. And I'll be there, Claire said. Maya nodded. If you want to step forward as founder, that's the moment. The board has already been briefed in closed session. They support you. The words settled heavily between them. Claire stood and walked to the window. She looked out at the dark street, at the reflection of herself in the glass. A woman shaped by patience, by restraint, by years of choosing peace over power. Behind her, the folder lay open on the table. CB Holdings. She thought of the children under the school awning, of the rain, of the car pulling away. Claire turned back to Maya. Her expression was calm, resolved. She nodded once. Outside, somewhere, someone believed they still had time. They didn't. Very soon, a door would open and the truth would walk in on its own. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Ethan Bennett stepped out like a man who believed he still belonged. For months, he'd walked these halls as an external consultant, talking about strategy and governance, never once wondering who actually owned the place. He adjusted his cufflinks, straightened his jacket, and glanced down the glass-lined hallway. The office hummed with quiet importance, polished floors, muted voices, the steady confidence of a place where decisions shape futures. Ethan walked with ease. This was familiar territory. This was where he felt powerful. Behind him, Rachel Moore exited the elevator more cautiously. She looked composed on the surface, heels steady, hair perfect, but her eyes moved too quickly. Her shoulders were tight. The blue company lanyard hung heavier around her neck than it ever had before. You're overthinking this, Ethan murmured as they walked. It's just a board briefing. They probably want to talk about my recommendations. Rachel forced a smile. Of course. But she didn't believe it. They entered the conference room together. The board members were already seated, men and women in tailored suits, tablets open, expressions neutral. At the far end of the table sat Linda Harris, the HR director, calm and observant. Beside her was Michael Grant, external legal counsel, flipping through a slim folder with quiet focus. Mark Ellison, the COO, sat near the center, posture tense but composed. Ethan nodded confidently as he took a seat near the middle. Rachel sat 2 chairs away, close enough to feel protected. She clasped her hands tightly in her lap. The meeting began routinely. Quarterly updates, compliance summaries, performance metrics. Ethan relaxed slightly. This was fine. He'd weathered harder rooms. Then the door opened. The sound cut clean through the room. Every head turned. Claire walked in. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She wore a simple, tailored coat, her posture straight, her expression calm, almost gentle. Her presence shifted the air instantly, like a pressure change before a storm. Ethan's breath caught. Rachel's face drained of color. Most of the board had never seen her in person. They'd known her by a different name on documents, by her voice in a few high-level calls, by the trust. Now she was here. Claire walked to the table and placed a familiar leather folder down with deliberate care. The sound it made against the polished surface was soft, but it echoed. She looked around the room once, making eye contact with each board member. Then she spoke. "I'm Claire Hart Bennett," she said evenly. "Founder and majority owner, acting through the CB Holdings Trust." Silence fell like a physical weight. Ethan stared at her, his mind scrambling. Hart, Bennett, founder. The words collided in his head, refusing to fit into any story he'd told himself. Rachel's hands trembled. Mark Ellison recovered first. He inclined his head slightly in respect. He had known Claire Hart for years, voice only. Now he understood the rest of her name. Linda Harris folded her hands. Michael Grant closed his folder. Claire remained standing. "I've been fully briefed on the recent internal investigation," she said calmly. "Out of respect for everyone in this room, I thought it best that we address the findings transparently." She nodded once to Michael. The screen at the end of the room lit up. Emails appeared first. Clear, time-stamped, intimate in tone. Messages between Ethan and Rachel sent during work hours, mixing client updates with personal plans. The room grew still as lines of text scrolled upward. Rachel swallowed hard. Ethan's jaw tightened. Next came expense reports, highlighted discrepancies, adjusted categories, bar charges and meals that didn't match any documented client activity, all tied to the same corporate card. Linda spoke quietly. Multiple violations of company policy regarding use of corporate funds, then access logs and blurred security stills. Badge entries late at night, 2 IDs, R. Moore, E. Bennett, temporary consultant badge. No scheduled meetings, matching the dates on the expenses. Finally, the video played. The argument, the threats. Rachel's voice filled the room, sharp and unfiltered. "If this blows back on me, I'll say you pursued me. I'll give them everything." A murmur rippled through the board. Ethan went pale. Claire watched him without expression. When the video ended, the silence returned heavier now. Michael spoke first. "These materials have already been reviewed by HR, outside counsel, and the audit committee," he said. "We are here to record formal actions." Linda Harris turned to Rachel, her tone even. "Miss Moore," she said, "based on the documented misconduct, the misuse of company time and resources, and your admitted intent to misrepresent events if investigated, you are placed on immediate administrative leave, pending final termination." Rachel's chair scraped loudly as she stood. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, her voice cracking. She looked to Ethan, desperate. "Say something." Ethan didn't move. Michael added, "Your professional compliance credentials will be reported to the appropriate licensing body with a full investigative file." Rachel's composure shattered. She grabbed her bag with shaking hands, her eyes darting around the room, searching for sympathy. She found none. As she reached the door, she glanced back once at Claire. Claire didn't flinch. Rachel left the room alone. The door closed behind her. Michael turned his attention to Ethan. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "as of this moment, your consulting agreement with the company is terminated for cause. We will notify your firm and any known partners that the termination relates to documented ethics violations." Ethan stared at him. My firm has other contracts with you." "Not anymore," Mark said quietly. "The board has voted to sever all ties." Claire said nothing. She didn't need to. "This concludes my involvement in this portion of the meeting," she said finally, her voice quiet but carrying. "Further legal actions will proceed through counsel." She gathered the folder and took a step back. The board members remained silent, absorbing what they had just witnessed. Careers had ended in minutes. Reputations had shifted without a single raised voice. Ethan finally found his. "Claire," he whispered, "please." The word broke, small and useless. Claire looked at him once. She didn't answer. She turned and walked out of the room. Behind her, the man who thought he understood her sat frozen, watching the life he assumed was secure collapse without a single dramatic scene. And as the door closed softly behind Claire, one truth settled heavily in the air. This was only the beginning. The papers hit the table with a sharp, final sound. Ethan flinched. The courtroom was quiet in the way only serious places ever were: wood-paneled walls, high ceilings, the faint echo of footsteps that reminded everyone inside that nothing said here could be taken back. The bailiff stepped away after serving the documents, leaving Ethan staring down at the divorce petition as if it were written in a language he didn't understand. Across the aisle, Claire sat perfectly still. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair neatly pulled back, her hands folded calmly in her lap. There was no anger on her face, no triumph, just focus. She looked like a woman who had already made peace with what was about to happen. Beside her sat Daniel Ross, composed, precise, his posture relaxed in a way that came only from preparation. He had guided Claire through every step, separating what belonged in corporate files from what belonged in family court. Ethan's hands trembled as he lifted the papers. Grounds for divorce were listed clearly at the top: adultery, financial misconduct impacting the marital estate, evidence attached under seal. "This is ridiculous," Ethan muttered under his breath. Claire didn't react. The judge entered moments later, an older woman with sharp eyes and a voice that carried authority without force. Everyone rose, everyone sat. The proceedings began. Daniel stood first, his tone calm but firm. He laid out the case without drama: evidence already submitted, timelines already verified. He did not show the board video in open court. Instead, he used certified summaries, hotel receipts, email excerpts, and the school's written account of the night Ethan failed to pick up his children in the storm. Each point landed cleanly. Ethan's lawyer tried to shift blame, to suggest emotional strain and miscommunication. The judge listened without interrupting. When he finished, she turned back to Daniel. "I've reviewed the documentation," she said. "We'll proceed." Ethan glanced back at Claire. She didn't look at him. As the hearing continued, visuals told the story more loudly than words. Documents slid across polished wood toward the judge. Ethan's fingers shook as he tried to organize his responses. Claire remained steady, her posture unchanged, her gaze forward. When Ethan finally spoke, his voice cracked. "I made mistakes," he said. "But this doesn't need to destroy everything. I can fix it. We can fix it." Claire's jaw tightened slightly, but she stayed silent. Daniel rose again. "With respect," he said, "my client did not destroy this marriage. She protected herself and her children when trust was broken and when marital funds and reputation were put at risk." He paused. "She has also taken steps to shield the company which predated the marriage and is held in trust under her maiden name from any financial entanglement in this process." The judge nodded. Slowly. "Mr. Bennett," she said, turning her attention fully to Ethan, "your actions had consequences beyond your marriage. You misused funds tied to your consulting income, and your behavior at your children's school in a dangerous storm was documented by multiple witnesses." Ethan swallowed. I panicked. "It was one time." "And one time can be enough," the judge said. "I've also received notice that several of your consulting contracts have been terminated following an internal ethics investigation at your client's company." Ethan's head snapped up. "That has nothing to do with, it has everything to do with your credibility," the judge replied. She turned to Claire. "Mrs. Bennett," she said, "do you wish to address the court?" Claire stood. Her movements were controlled, deliberate. When she spoke, her voice was clear and calm, carrying across the room without strain. "I trusted my husband," she said simply. "I built a life with him. I protected his image. When that trust was broken, I did not retaliate in public. I followed the law. I protected our children from chaos." She paused. "My priority has always been our children. It will stay that way." The judge nodded once. That was enough. The decision came swiftly after that. "Based on the evidence presented," the judge said, "this court grants the dissolution of marriage." The sound of the gavel echoed sharply. "Mr. Bennett will have no claim to CB Holdings or any of its operating subsidiaries, as those assets were established and placed in trust prior to the marriage. Ethan's breath hitched. Other marital property will be divided as outlined in the agreement before the court. Regarding the children, the judge continued, primary physical custody is awarded to Mrs. Bennett. Given Mr. Bennett's recent conduct, visitation will be initially supervised, with a review scheduled after a period of demonstrated consistency and responsibility. Claire closed her eyes for just a moment. Relief, not triumph, washed through her. Ethan sat frozen, staring ahead as if waiting for someone to stop it all. No one did. The judge looked directly at Claire now, her tone softer but no less firm. Mrs. Bennett, she said, you are free to move forward. The words landed quietly, powerfully. Claire nodded once in acknowledgement. As the courtroom began to empty, Ethan finally turned toward her, desperation breaking through his composure. Claire, he said hoarsely, we can still talk, please. I made a mistake. She looked at him then, not with anger, not with pity. With clarity, she didn't answer. Claire turned and walked out beside Daniel, her footsteps steady against the marble floor. Behind her, a chapter closed. Ahead of her, something else waited, something not built on survival, but on choice. And very soon, Claire would decide what her freedom would look like. The room fell silent the moment Claire stepped onto the stage. Hundreds of eyes lifted at once. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. The low hum of the company town hall vanished, replaced by a sharp, electric stillness. For the first time, many of them were seeing her not as a name in documents, not as the trust representative, but as a woman standing openly at the center of everything she had built. Claire Bennett, Claire Hart Bennett, as the slide behind her now read, stood tall. Her hands did not shake. Her face held no anger, only certainty. Behind her, the company logo glowed on the screen, clean, steady, familiar. In the front row sat Mark Ellison, the COO, his posture respectful, his expression serious. He had steered the company through the immediate aftermath of the scandal. Now, he watched the founder step into the light. Claire moved to the podium. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. This company was built on integrity, she said, her words calm and clear. On systems that work, on people who do the right thing when no one is watching. She let that sit for a beat. Recently, that trust was tested, not by all of you, but by a few. Choices were made that betrayed the standards we set. Those choices have been addressed privately, fairly, and firmly. A ripple of quiet relief moved through the room. People had heard rumors. Now they had confirmation that leadership hadn't ignored them. Power doesn't excuse betrayal, Claire continued, and silence should never be mistaken for weakness. Somewhere in the room, a few heads lifted. We all make mistakes, she said. What defines us is how we take responsibility for them. From today forward, we're implementing clearer boundaries around external consultants, stricter oversight on corporate cards, and expanded ethics training for everyone, including leadership. She paused. I expect the same standard from myself. The words were simple and completely true. When you see my name on documents, she said, I don't want it to feel distant anymore. I want you to know there is a person behind it who will protect this place and the people in it. When she stepped back from the podium, the silence broke into applause. Not wild, not frantic, but strong, unified, earned. Claire nodded once in acknowledgement and left the stage without waiting for more. Outside the building, the afternoon light was soft. The triplets stood near the entrance with a trusted family friend, backpacks at their feet, swinging their legs impatiently as they waited. Noah spotted her first. Mom. They ran to her all at once. Claire knelt down immediately, bringing herself to their level, wrapping her arms around all three. She breathed them in warm, solid, safe. We're safe, she said quietly, looking each of them in the eyes. And we're moving forward. Lily smiled. Grace hugged her tighter. Noah nodded, as if that promise alone was enough. Because it was. Across town, in a small, sparsely furnished apartment, Ethan sat alone. The room was bare. No photos on the walls, no noise. His phone lay on the table beside him, screen dark, emails unanswered. Messages from former colleagues remained unread, some polite, some cold, all distant. Rachel had stopped responding weeks ago. He'd heard through someone else that she had taken a job out of state, lower position, no leadership role. Her reputation followed her quietly, the way truths often did. She never reached out again. Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, there was no one to blame but himself. That evening, Claire tucked the children into bed. She lingered longer than usual, listening to their breathing, smoothing their hair. When she turned off the light, she stood in the doorway for a moment, letting the quiet settle. In the hallway, the drawer remained open. The leather folder rested inside, no longer hidden, no longer heavy. Claire closed it gently. Later, as she stood by the window, watching the last light fade from the sky, she reflected on everything she had been and everything she had chosen to become. She had loved deeply, she had trusted fully, and when that trust was broken, she had not lost herself trying to prove it. She had waited, she had prepared, she had acted. Her phone buzzed softly with a message from Mark confirming the next board agenda and ethics policy updates. She smiled faintly and set it down. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, new responsibilities. But tonight there was peace and strength and a future built on her own terms. As she turned away from the window, one quiet truth followed her like a steady echo. He thought love made her weak. He never realized it made her patient. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.